eventually the problem for Keir Starmer is that his MO now is that he kind of sets out his stall. He decides, right, I'm going to go out there and make a statement. And instead of sort of calming the waters, and instead of sorting out the system and making sure that everybody now understands we're on this page, he sort of makes it worse.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to have the capability of calming a situation down. Like, remember when he came out with the far-right thugs and in the midst of all the riot stuff and started saying we were going to, we're going to prosecute people to the fullest extent of the law. That wasn't what people needed to hear at that point.
No.
They needed to hear, look, I understand why people are angry, but you can't be doing this.
Yes.
That's what he should have said.
Yes, so he goes into sort of straight-laced lawyer mode. You know, I'm the former DPP.
Right. You've broken the law.
You've broken the law, and then comes down in that sort of rather headmasterly approach that he has.
It's a bit like he'd be the guy that would prosecute you for driving too fast to the hospital because your wife's about to have a baby.
Yes.
And he'd go, here's your parking ticket.
And you'd say, well, hang on a moment, my wife's in the back and about to have a baby.
Right.
Can you just show me a little bit of discretion? No, there's your parking ticket.
And that's his problem.
And people don't necessarily warm to that, do they? They think, hang on a moment,
no, he's a Jobsworth. At the end of the day, you're a Jobsworth.
Could you just overlook that parking ticket?
Exactly.
That ticket?
Right, exactly right. Well, let's talk about the Miliband brothers, because the Miliband brothers have often been on opposite sides of the argument. Over in America, we've got a story in the newspaper saying that former Foreign Secretary David Miliband has been lobbying Sir Keir Starmer's Downing Street team to become the UK's ambassador to the US, given that Lord Mandelson now might be in trouble because Trump doesn't want him.
No. So Number 10 were very clear about this. I was in the briefing on Monday, and they were very clear about this, Mike, that they supported Lord Mandelson. They think he's an excellent candidate, that Donald Trump will value his expertise, considerable expertise, and that they see that Donald Trump will approve his appointment or his recommendation from the British government to be the UK ambassador to Washington. But it's pretty obvious right now from those speaking around Trump that actually
he's not keen.
That Donald Trump isn't keen on Peter Mandelson, and that's why this story has emerged about David Miliband saying, "Well, listen, I can be Plan B.
I can help you out.
I can help you out."
Yeah, what a nice man.
Vetoes, but this would be highly unusual. It would be highly embarrassing.
Yeah.
And any talk, there was talk at the beginning of the week that Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, that special relationship endures, and they'd be sitting down within weeks to discuss everything from trade to to the Chagos Islands.
The King,
the King would be wheeled out to invite them, and of course we know his relationship and his fondness for Prince William's beard. It would this would be it'd be a fine relationship. Everything's going to be fine and dandy. I'm not sure it is.
It's not.
And the obvious one of the first decisions that Trump can really make his mark and show his disapproval for the British government, and ultimately, as somebody who lives in this country and pays taxes in this country, I think we all should be worried about this. This is not a good thing. Nobody celebrates there not being a good relationship between the UK and the US. It doesn't do us any favours.
But he has, on the face of it, he's moved the Churchill statue back into the bust, back into the White House.
It should be a good relationship.
It should be, but also Donald Trump is a clever guy, and he will make Starmer work for it, is my suggestion. And it may well be that Mandelson ends up getting the job, but Trump wants to put him through the ringer first, and he wants to make him wait, and he'll probably wait for him to beg him to call him. He'll make him wait for that. Because he plays the game, doesn't he?
Yeah. And he's
the art of the deal.
He's very astute like this, and obviously comparisons have been made previously to some sort of like mobster boss, but there is something true to it that if you and he forgave J.D. Vance was scathing about Trump previously, but he's his vice president. But if you kiss the ring, if you go up and you say, "I'm sorry, let's be friends, I made a mistake," then he's willing to accommodate you. What he doesn't like, and I think this was where it was heading, particularly like at the beginning of last week with the Chagos Islands deal, was people thinking that they can pull the wool over his eyes, or that he's a bit, he's stupid, and that they can somehow just get round him.
Which, of course, he's very much not. Now, meanwhile, back here, Ed Miliband, crazy Ed Miliband, as some people call him, he's been in front of another committee, this time in the House of Lords. Here he is talking about net zero.
You can hold two truths in your mind at the same time. One, that the transition is unstoppable, and secondly, it's not going nearly fast enough. And I think both truths are correct, that the world is moving.
I mean, The trouble with Ed Miliband is he's got a one-track mind, right?
Yeah.
You know, all he talks about is net zero. Well, it is unstoppable in some ways because he keeps pushing it, but in America, it is stoppable because they've just stopped it, right? They've basically gone, net zero, forget about it. You know, drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Doesn't sound like net zero to me.
Drill, baby, drill is the biggest stopper on net zero.
Yeah.
And if you've got the American president, of course, contribution to CO2 emissions in globally there is no greater contribution than America and China and India, and we contribute less than 1%. We will be sort of scraping the molecules off the side of the chimneys.
Yes.
The carbon molecules. That's how significant Ed Miliband's policy of net zero is going to be. It is nothing.
Yeah,
in the grand
and
scheme
also
of
his
things.
mad crusade is not even shared inside of the cabinet by the looks of it, because we've got a big story in the Telegraph today on page 2. Sadiq Khan poised to lead a Labour rebellion against Rachel Reeves over her backing for a third runway at Heathrow Airport. We talked about this yesterday. She needs growth. She's sort of mono focused on that. Wants growth in every single aspect of the economy. So she wants more air traffic. She wants more planes coming into Heathrow. She wants more planes leaving Heathrow. She wants to expand Luton Airport as well.
And Gatwick.
So, you know, we're talking about a massive expansion of airports, which is hardly green.
No.
So now there's going to be a row between Sadiq Khan, presumably, and Miliband and Rachel Reeves.
Yes. And what's quite interesting, and I was talking to some friends about this, is that when we think back to the days of the Conservatives and the rows that went on, they were always very quiet. They were good at branding their little factions within the Conservative Party. You know, you had the five families, you had the ERG, the One Nationers. You know, they're very good at having their groups. In Labour, it's a little more opaque. They're not so. The factions within Labour are not so obvious. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Well, Darren Jones was talking at the weekend about how they have these little working groups inside of the cabinet. And the way he was talking, it sounded like there's thousands of them. You know, and all these little kind of cliques, if you like, of sort of 4 or 5 ministers who sit over there in this room, talk about something, and then they all go to another room, and a couple of other people drop out, a couple of other people come in. It's all they do.
It means you can push people to the side. It's about which mini cabinets you're not in.
Right.
But within the Labour Party, there is a split. There's a fundamental split. In the general election, Labour were threatened by the Green vote, by the lefties. They were worried that they were going to lose their base, and by this I'm talking about the Jeremy Corbyn supporters, the Corbynistas. That they were going to. There was a worry that they would float off to the Greens, and the Greens won with sort of 4 MPs or so. Right. So there's a real concern about the Green Party.
But also the Greens were sort of overtaken by Islamists, weren't they, as we saw in the north in local by-elections.
That's another worry story.
You know. But I mean, when you say green, do you mean the Hamas bandana, or do you mean actually cleaning up the planet?
And the problem that they had was they went with the Green vote, and that's why Ed Miliband got the job of being, the person in charge of net zero. He clearly believes it, right? He's not there to make up the numbers. He's there to drive through
he's a zealot.
this agenda. But at the same time, that doesn't square with a chancellor who wants economic growth, because you want to build the runway, you want to build the third runway or double capacity at Gatwick. The newts have to go somewhere.
I'm afraid so.
The great crested newts, there will be a pond. There will be a rare lake or rare birds congregating around a lake, and that lake will need to be filled in and bulldozed over and a runway built. It doesn't happen.
And we've already been told, and this is on the front page of the Times, page 1, we'll have to break in a second, that basically Labour are going to curb environmental quangos as well. So you bring up the subject of newts there. In an effort to unblock the planning system, regulators will no longer be able to demand that developers reduce the potential environmental harm caused by new buildings. So the newts, bad news for the newts, bad news for the bats.
Yes, the 100 million bat tunnel would never get built.
You wouldn't have to worry about any of that. So I mean, they can't have it both ways, can they? It's either Rachel Reeves' way or the highway. And if you're Ed Miliband, you have to sit down and shut up, don't you?
Well, you'd have thought so, but Ed Miliband he has his little fiefdom in net zero, in the Department for Energy and net zero. I wouldn't, given how badly it's gone for Rachel Reeves, and I don't want to be mischievous in this piece of commentary, Mike, but I wouldn't bet against Ed Miliband's.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Rachel Reeves, she's going for growth. We've got unemployment at a massive high. We saw what happened in the markets a couple of weeks ago, and how perilous her position was, as a result of that. And people were saying, well, is she going to last until this spending review in the end of March? I think there are questions where you might say, well, who's in the surer place? Is it Ed Miliband or Rachel Reeves?
Well, very interesting. Let's see.